Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you the top 10 best beginner arc tames, and that means just if you're new to the game, not if you're early on in the game. In at number 10 I've decided to put the Carnotaurus, as I find this is really an effective and useful creature to have in your roster. It is just so nice and very easy to tame. Yes, you could say the Aloe is a great one as well, and I'll give it here as a spot on here, sorry, as an honorable mention. But I find the Carno is just the better creature for me, but I'll let you decide that for yourself. What is the better creature for you in terms of ease of taming and just the overall size of the creature and mobility and damage and health, and all of those factors really do play in. And for me, the Carno is always the creature which I'll go for. Feel free to disagree in the comments down below. I do not mind if your opinion is different to mine. But for me, again, the Carno is just the one for me. Compared to the Aloe, I vastly prefer the smaller size, and I like just having a smaller carnivore. I also find they're easier to tame as well, just by a little bit, because trapping them is easier, considering the Aloe usually does spawn in a pack. Although in ASA that's less apparent because baby versions of the creatures can spawn, and it's pretty much the same in terms of difficulty. The only real difference is the Carno is still slightly easier, as killing a Carno is a little bit easier than killing an Aloe, especially if there's some others about as well. But you know, there might be some other Carnos about in this instance too. The Carno also does the bleed ability, and I like the amount of mobility it has. I can feel reasonably stealthy and quite good with myself while traveling around and demolishing loads of creatures around me with this thing, and that is why I really like it as a beginner arc tame. Next up, we've got the UT, and although you might not be thinking about bosses quite yet, I find this is a really nice one if you are new to the game, as yes, maybe a Rex is something which you go for, and a Rex is something which you definitely can, but I find the UT in most places is generally just a better carnivore to use around the map. The Spino is a great option as well, but I find the UT is the easiest option to tame out of those three, and you still got that courage roar and the fear roar, tons of mobility and a lot of damage dealing. They are just really great carnivores to run around the map with and use all across Arc. They are very sufficient for all of your big carnivore needs. Their stamina is good, their health is good, their weight is good, their damage is good, and obviously they've got those abilities as well. So, you know, they're even nicer to use, and they're better at swimming than the Rex. I know you're probably not going to be using these things as underwater carnivore, but I find they really are not the worst for that job, and if you need to cross some sections of water, you won't find it too difficult to do that with the UT. Next up, we've got the Stego. You can either really choose between this, the Trike, and maybe the Parasaur, possibly a Diplo or a Bronto as well, although this is my preferable one. Also, sorry about all the flickering in this B-roll. I should probably re-record it when ASA sort of fixes itself up a little bit, because yeah, it wasn't doing the best when I was recording this, and shadow flickering was a very commonplace in the game. It still really is on the island. Not really on Scorch, because there's a lot less trees about and generally a lot less shadows about, or maybe the issue's just fixed really on that map. The Stego obviously has gone through some TLC for release, and since it's been released, sorry, in the early stages of the game, and it makes it even better, because if you're a PvP arc player, then even if you're new to the game, you could possibly do some lower level raiding with one of these creatures. You can get into the high end ones as well, but turret soaking with this thing on maybe a kind of mid-tier base is going to be something which you can do solo with one of these creatures, obviously by using the, I think, hardened plate is the one for turret soaking. The heavy plate is good for gathering wood, and the sharpened plate will gather you all your berries and things like that, which is what I would use it for from a PvE perspective, and obviously that's what I mainly use it for as a PvE player. Then at number 7, I've decided to put the Pteranodon, as well, yes, they're going to be really great for you as a beginner tame. I find there's some better ones out there. You may have put this higher, and that is totally acceptable, but this really, for me, deserves to be in the number 7 spot. No higher or no lower. It is a very easy fly to tame, probably the easiest kind of really good traveling mount out there to tame, just apart from one creature, which has actually made it right the way into the #1 spot because I find it's better and it's even easier to tame than this thing. The only real difficulty is the map that it spawns on, but still, as a beginner Ark player, you might have access to those maps and might not, and you can differ this list depending on what maps you have. But I am contributing all maps into this, but mainly kind of focusing on maps like the island and those 3 DLCs, because, you know, in theory, most people are just going to have a lot more playtime on those, and they're going to be playing those first, or just generally playing those because they don't have the other maps. Then the real difficulty for this is the saddle. The chitin or keratin can be a little bit difficult to get. I find go with chitin, it tends to be easier. Just kill any kind of insects that you can find around, the small ones like the Titanomira and the Meganeura, and you'll have a good time with getting that chitin. You can obviously get it through keratin as well from the carb enemies, which are the turtles you'll find on the beaches, but go through insects because you'll get it done a lot faster, and obviously they take a lot less time to kill. I wasn't really quite that knowledgeable back in like 2015, 2016. But at least I do know that now. Obviously the Pteranodon is very easy to tame. Bowler it and either use a club or some tranks. Club if it's a low level, tranks if it is a higher one, and then saddle it up and you get yourself a fast, agile flyer, which can be used for both PvE and PvP scenarios. The Thler maybe you wouldn't think of as a beginner tame, but trust me, if you take your precautions properly, you can get this creature tamed properly, well and efficiently. If you have yourself access to the Thler saddle, which I think is in the level 40 or 50 range, as far as I'm concerned, you can obviously check that as well. Then this creature is really going to be just great for you to have, as the trap can be very simply made with some wood and then simply trank it out when it's in the trap. Obviously look for one on the redwood trees. You'll probably want yourself a Pteranodon as well, or just a flyer to get around. You can do it on foot with some other creatures, but I find a Pteranodon is quite an easy and effective creature to use to tame one. Then once you've got it into said trap, then trank it out. Obviously make sure you've got some armor on too, at least chitin really, because you don't want to be killing yourself in a scenario like this. Put some sleeping bags down if you're not sure if you will survive, because they're going to come in real handy. So you don't have to go back all the way to your base, and you might not have another Pteranodon lying around, so it's going to be a long while until you get back to the redwoods, and that Pteranodon might die as well because you can't get back to it in time. But then once you've tamed one, you've got yourself one of the best, if not the best creature really on the island, just for everything in general. Obviously it's no berry gatherer, but it still can deal the bleed ability, and it can climb any kind of wall or vertical surface. It is extremely mobile and generally an all-round great caving and carnivore to have in your roster. It is an amazing creature, and I really do like people that use a creature like this, and I like using a creature like this. It really is a good one, which actually, if you prepare for it, beginners can actually do it with relative ease. In number 5, we have got ourselves the Bionics, and this is going to be the best caving creature out there for you. Yes, I said the Thler was good. The Saber can also do some stuff as well, but the Barry is really going to be the one you're going to look out for when it comes to caving. Again, you might not be thinking about that yet, but trust me, get one of these things, they'll be great for caving. They have the health, stamina and agility to get through those things, and on top of that as well, they are the right size to fit into all of them, really, apart from the artifact of the Skylord Cave. Don't even try bringing any creature into that. You're going to have to do that one on foot. They also just are great creatures for general mobility around the map as well. They can get a lot done when it comes to travel. Not quite as much as the Thler, but they can jump around, and they are really good swimmers, which the Thler really can't justify. Also, I do find they're a little bit easier to tame too. Their special ability while underwater is the fact that they can do a spin attack, stunning creatures up to the size of a Megalodon, and that makes them really good for the underwater caves as well, which again you may not be thinking about. Don't know why I said it twice, but either way, yeah, you might not be thinking about that yet, but trust me, that time will come at some point, and it's just better to prepare first, and you can still use these things for a great traveling mount and combat creature. Next up, I've decided to put the crystal wyverns on the list, and yes, the wyvern does deserve some attention and a lot of respect, but if you do have crystal isles, which is a free DLC, obviously Raasclark is as well, so you can have access to the wyverns for free, then hop on crystal isles and get yourself some crystal wyverns. You do need to be level 60, so get yourself a note run done. If you don't know how to do that, look up, there will be some simple tutorials online for note runs that you can do on crystal isles. Trust me, it will be easy, you'll have no issues doing that whatsoever. Then get yourself some trank arrows and probably a sufficient trap to trap one of these wyverns. Then obviously you're going to knock it out and get that primal crystal. Then find a crystal wyvern, which you'll find to be the most desirable for you. For my preference, it is blood crystal wyverns, but you might like the emerald crystal wyverns or the tropical crystal wyverns more. Just pick whichever one is most appealing to you. Then there's a specific spot you can go on its back, kind of where you would ride it and get onto that spot of it, and then you know, just press E and it's going to start passive taming, and you can just stay on that spot, and then every time it tells you to feed it, keep pressing E, and then eventually you'll tame this thing. Make sure you have enough primal crystal though, because that can be a little bit of a difficulty. Always use the app Dodo Dex if you're unsure of what you're going to need for taming. It's not going to be the most accurate thing in the world, but it will give you quite a good assumption for what you can expect. So overestimate that a little bit and then you should be fine. But yes, they're the wyverns, but just so much easier to tame, and I find their elemental abilities are even better, and they're not really difficult to tame. In number 3, I've decided to put the Deinonychus. Again, you might not think of this as a tame that you can get quite early on as a beginner, but still, these things are really easy. Go onto Valguero if you haven't already and get some of these things spawn in the Chalk Cliffs biome. I'm not actually sure what spawn point it is, but you know, it's the biome that looks like this. I'm pretty sure it's quite central. It's sort of near the big lake that's in the middle of the map. Then you're going to want to find yourself some Deinonychus nests. Kind of make sure you have a grappling hook, or actually you can just kamikaze, go in and then try and run out, and then wherever you die, then just pick up your body from there and get out and go to your base. Then just put some torches around this egg and raise this thing, and then obviously have sufficient meat at the time to bring this thing up. They really aren't very difficult. You don't have to worry about imprint and all of that yet. They're not going to be used for boss fighting when you're first getting them. Once you've got that saddle though, you can really use these things as great carnivores to travel around the map with, and once you've got a nice breeding pair, you don't have to worry about taming them this way anymore. And then obviously you can worry about imprints and all of that when you start getting these creatures ready for doing your boss fights, as they'll have a better chance if obviously they've been fully imprinted, and it's just going to help their stats all round. They also take no fall damage, which is just great for their traveling, and like the Thler, they can scale any kind of wall or vertical surface. They really are good tames for traveling, and I love them for this use. And considering how easy they are to tame, for all you beginners out there, really go on Valguero and tame one of these things, because you will definitely not regret it. And you can always just transfer it onto whatever map maybe you're trying on a little bit more, because Valguero might not be your main map at your time. In number 2, I've decided to put the Argentavis, as I find this is just generally a really great creature all round. It has a variety of abilities, and generally it is one which you can find abundantly across the island's mountains, and it is just going to be a go-to. You may not consider it as a beginner tame again for the saddle level, which I think is 61, something around that, but trust me, with note runners you can get there pretty quickly, and you can still be a beginner to the game and get into the level 60s. Then once you've got one, which can be done with a very simple trap, I advise you to trap, and then you lure it in, and then you obviously close the trap off. Trank this thing out, you can just use a crossbow. You don't really need to worry about the long necks for even things like that. You don't really need to worry about the long neck for most things, where you can still use trank arrows right to the late stages of the game, but you know, it's advisable, and you can even get into shocking tranks too, but trank arrows will do just fine for a tame like this. And then you've got weight reduction, things like metal, crystal, and obsidian. They can carry all kinds of creatures, as well as that their smithy axe as saddle, making them really great for traveling to places where you're going caving. Just carry your baryonyx in the claws of the RG, take it to wherever you need to go for whatever cave you're doing, and then when you get out, if those arsenal fluids have damaged any of your armor, then you can simply just repair it in the RG. Also, if your RG is low in health, you can always eat something and not in your inventory explicitly, but just eat a dead creature, or just kill a creature and eat it once it's dead, and then you're going to get yourself a nice regen buff, and it will definitely come in handy. And at number 1, I'm deciding to put the Maywing, as I find, considering its saddle is unlocked at level 18, it is absolutely insane how good this is as a glider. And yes, you may not have Gen 2 at your disposal, and that is perfectly okay. You can always moderate the list and get something like the RG or the Crystal Wyvern or the Deinonychus for all of those needs, but I just find they are just so good at gliding, I do have to warrant putting them in at the number 1 spot. They are the best travel mounts in the game in my opinion, and they're so easy to tame. A few signposts, you just trap them in a position, and then boom, like that, just give them a couple of train carriers. The saddle again is unlocked at level 18 really early on, and you can have yourself this amazing creature, which is, in my opinion, again, the best gliding creature in the game. They also are really good swimmers as well, which you might not expect out of these things, but when you could kind of think of them as a platypus, it sort of makes sense. They also do act as a portable breeding trough as well, so maybe if your Deinonychus needs feeding early on, you can get yourself that Maywing to feed it. Obviously you can just put meat in its inventory, but you know, I'm fleshing it out a little bit. And on top of that, they can gather berries too, like the Stego, but they've just got so many other nice attributes that I really do have to put them in at this spot. The top 10 best early Arc Tames. In at number 10, I've decided to put the Rex, as I find this is generally a very admirable creature to have in any given scenario, and it's been in the game for just such a long while. It's been in the game since it's been released, so it's almost been in the game for 9 years now. It's a lot of games in one sentence, isn't it? But either way, this is the creature which would get you through all your bosses. This is the creature that you would look up to, because you're like, come on, we'd have to get yourself a Rex, because the Rex is, or at least one of the gold creatures that you would be going for in the early stages of Arc, and it really still does stand up to that to some regards today, although it has lost a little bit of its popularity with ease of taming and other creatures coming out, which you might just say are simply better. But there were some other good options at the time. Obviously things like UTs and all of that didn't exist at all back then, and you know, that's a 2017 creature, which is far too late for this list. I'm pretty sure all the creatures on this list are 2015, but there might be a few that maybe just peek into the 2016 era. Next up, we have got the Quets. As I found when this dropped, still in 2015, at least when I checked the dates the last time, it was still 2015, and it really does hold up as being a really great Arc Tame, and it did kind of shake the scales a little bit when it released. Nothing really like it had been released before, and that's why it really stands so well as a creature. Like, look at this thing. It is a flying animal in which that you can put a platform saddle on the back of it. You could build your own base on the back of this thing. That was just so mind-blowing at the time, and it really deserves a place on this list for that for me. But due to it just being a little bit later on, and then also a nerf quite soon after, I do have to demote it quite a lot. And there are just some other creatures which I thought were a lot more exciting, and this concept was definitely very exciting to me, but it didn't really grip me the most. But I still have to put it in here, as it did make a lot of impact to a lot of Arc players, but I rarely used this thing at the time, and I rarely use this thing now, and I rarely have. I'm sure we all know the Dmoradon. This actually made a massive impact on me when this was first released into the game. I was like, wait, what? This tiny thing, and it can just do so much damage and attack creatures, and I used this all the time. I would have like a whole big massive pack of Deinonychus behind me, and then boom, like that, they would all go in on those creatures. And yes, I definitely lost a few in my time, but I really did enjoy using these creatures. A very nice, neat addition, and still a 2015 Arc Tame. In at number 7, we have got the Ichthyosaurus, and this really did captivate me as someone who enjoyed the Arc Ocean at the time, and I maybe know that's not the best thing, especially for a beginner, to look out to, because, you know, the Arc Ocean is a very hostile place, but back then there really wasn't all too much in it and to it, and you didn't get, obviously, those birds, I can't remember the name of them now, that would steal all your stuff. Not sure when the jellyfish and electric eels were added, but you did have like plesiosaurs, mosasaurs, megalodons, and obviously the ichthyosaurus when it was added. At least I'm pretty sure it wasn't around once the game was released, but still a 2015 creature nonetheless, I'm sure of. This was the first creature, as long as I'm right, to include the passive tame, and that added a lot to the sense of the game, and it was a really cool ability, and I still remember it to this day. The passive taming ability, or not really ability but method, was a nice thing to have, and it really felt like the game was evolving, pun intended, because obviously the title was evolved in it, and it was a nice step in the right direction for us, and we really enjoyed this creature. And I say we because everyone that I know when this came out was really excited about this creature. It was a fast, agile underwater mount that could be tamed really easily, and it offered a lot of support with underwater exploration. Very good early tame. Speaking of the Megalodon, I've decided to put on this list as well, as I really did love this creature. This was the first underwater mount I ever tamed. Named it Bruce, obviously, because you've got to name it Bruce. The shark in Jaws was called Bruce, so you've got to name all your sharks Bruce. At least that's the way that I look at it. What's your name for your Megalodons, actually? Because I want to know. Comment that down below in the description, or in the comments, actually. You can't comment in the description. Don't know why I said that, but yeah, comment that down below. Would you name your Megalodons, or do you have any funny or interesting names for any of your creatures? As I have a couple, I've probably hinted a few of them in the videos, but I want to know what yours are, because I know people that have loads of weird names for creatures. I'll give you one right now. The Titanoboa, no Titanoboa, it's a danger noodle. Always, that was one of my favourites. The Megalodon has since seen a TLC though, since its release, and now it does the bleed ability, but I still really loved it back then. I didn't even know what a bleed ability was back in those days. As far as I'm concerned, that wasn't in the game at all, apart from maybe the Giga had it when it released, something like that, but that might have been a later edition as well. The Giga was also later on the list, by the way, but let's continue. Now, I'm sure we all know what our first flight was, and in number 5, I've decided to put the Tanon Slapbang in the middle, because I feel like it deserves this spot on the list. It will be your first flyer in Ark. At least it was the first flyer in Ark that you would be taming back in the day, as, to be honest, pretty much everyone was playing on the official rates, really, unless you were playing single player. I think there was still that 2.5 extra multiplier since the game had been released. Either way, not too sure. The grind was definitely on back in those days though, and you'd have to grind a lot to even get yourself a Pteranodon, let alone an RG, but we'll get onto that later in the list as well, by the way. And this was just pretty much your only first flyer that you'd be getting. You would bowler it or trap it in some way, and then after that you would knock it out, and then boom, you get that saddle. And that chitin and keratin was the hardest part getting this thing, probably, at least in my opinion. Obviously getting to the level of the saddle was just a tremendous exercise to get to at the time, as well as getting like 35 or 40 I think it was, because they grouped levels and 5s and 10s really in those stages of the game. Like you get loads of stuff at level 25, and then you get loads of stuff at level 30. Kind of glad they changed it, because you get stuff at all different levels, and obviously it's a lot more organized now. Did you prefer the old system? Do you prefer the new system? Give me your take on that, because I'm definitely a very new system for Ark stuff, but you know, your preference might be the old stuff if that's your thing. Would you rather just get loads of stuff? Actually, let me rephrase this. Would you rather get loads of stuff at level 25, or get stuff at level 21, 22, 23, 24 and 25 just as a collective? Or would you rather just get everything at 20 and then 25? Would that be better for you, or would that not be better for you? Comment that down below, because I'm inquisitive. Continuing on, I have decided to put the Spinosaurus, as I really did look up to this creature in my early stages of Ark. You might think, well, the Rex is that go-to all-time creature where it's like, you know, the Rex is my goal tame, that is the only creature I'm going to go for. Why possibly would I go for anything else? Well, the Spino was really one of my go-tos back in the day. It just seemed bigger and scarier and able to do more damage, and just a beefier creature. It really just was one of those tames where I was like, I really do love it for all of its attributes, and I did definitely enjoy it as an Ark creature. To have this thing on your side was absolutely insane. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and when I first tamed one, I was on top of the world. I couldn't care less about my Rexes. Obviously I still kept care of them, but the Spino was the new business in town. It could just do everything that I needed it to. It was a really great underwater tame as well, so I felt the Ichthyosaurus and Megalodon were a little bit more obsolete, although I still did use them quite a lot, as you know, you could get around still pretty easily with those. And you know, I had that kind of underwater base setup that Squid had in his old Ark videos from back in the day as well. I did actually find that to be quite nice for me actually, but these Spino still did kind of replace a lot of creatures for me in a way, or at least take a lot of the attention away from them, you could say. And again, this creature has had a lot of TLC, mainly just actually the form of one TLC since it's been released, a model change as well on top of all of that, and it really is for the better. It is a much better creature now than it was back in 2015, but still I really did love it, and it was a really great early addition to Ark, and I'm pretty sure it was definitely, actually I'm like definitely confident that it released with the game. In number 3 we've got the Carno, and I just love this creature to death back in the day. I really did just sort of need one of these things. I was basically just completely reliant on having a creature like the Carno for me. It was a go-to of mine, and it still is a go-to of mine. It is held to the test of time, and I really do love it as a creature that came out in the very early stages of Ark. Again, very confident that this was just released with the game. It has also had a lot of TLC too, in the form of one TLC update, where now it's got the bleed ability, and it just generally is a bit more well-rounded. I'm not sure if it's had a model update. It definitely had a texture update at some point midway through 2015, maybe going into 2016 at that point, and that was actually quite exciting to see. But the Carno really did just excite me as a creature, because I had loads of raptors at the time, but they kept getting killed, and it really wasn't something which I wanted to keep taming. And I saw the Carno and I was like, right, I'll get one of those. Looked at where the shadow level was, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't, but I was like, no, I'll still get one. And then it followed me around everywhere once I obtained one, of course, and I would take it on metal runs and all of that, and just let it attack some things, get its level up, because that's kind of just what I did to level up creatures back then. You know, I just take them around with me and just tell it to kill things. It really did also just make my life a whole lot easier as well, which just added to the overall benefit of this creature and how much I loved it. And then when I finally got that saddle, it was just so nice to ride around on these creatures as well. And then I could progress onto things like Rexes and Spinos, because allos weren't a thing at this time whatsoever. I think they're a 2016 addition to Ark, and the Carno really did rule the roost, and I still think it's quite high up there for me, and actually for me, superior to the allo. In number 2 we've got the Argentavis, and this is again gone through TLC with a model update and a whole host of new features. Not sure if I actually did have the Smithy as a saddle when it first released. I think the Castoroides was the first one to gain that, but maybe it gained it at the same time or at a later date when the TLC stuff happened. And I'm not sure if it had all the weight reduction, but it definitely had a very high weight stat, and it could pick up a huge amount of tames, much more than something like a Pteranodon, and it really was just an upgraded Pteranodon in my eyes. More stamina, more weight, and because you could crank the speed on these things, because movement speed on flies was still a thing. Really do wish that that was still a thing that you could do, because I just loved it so much. And I still, obviously, every time I'm playing single player or if I'm running a server or something, I will always have fly speed leveling on, and obviously player speed leveling now if I'm doing ASA, which actually I do little of. I mainly stick to Survival Evolved, because I'm just enjoying it a lot more right now, and I am playing through Gen 1, and you can't really do that on Survival Ascended at the moment. I'm playing through it again, obviously. I have done Gen 1 before, and the RG really just was the kind of gateway to the best fire on the map, and that's why the Quetzal really didn't land too much for me, because I felt the RG did everything it needed to do for me, and I didn't need something like the Quetzal. Yes, the Skybase was very cool and inventive, but maybe not quite what I wanted. And in number 1 we've got the Giga, because this is, in my opinion, really deserving of this spot. It is just a go-to Ark creature for me, or at least it was back in the day. Now I kind of tend to stick to the Argentavis. And come on, this thing still released in 2015, yes, later on in the year, and it was an absolute monster. It was just so fun to get. The Rex and the Spino sort of seemed a bit obsolete with a creature like this. It was so massive, and it might have done the blade ability back then, but I'm not sure. The wild ones, obviously, because the tame ones had no bleed ability whatsoever. And obviously the wild ones were a lot more powerful than once you got the tame ones, but you didn't really notice that at the time. You would just absolutely decimate all the creatures in the area, and that rage buff was actually a really cool, nice, neat ability that you'd be crediting a lot of the time. At least I was. I thought that was a very cool addition, and it really made the Giga more immersive as a creature, where now it just kind of seems to be an annoyance. And it really didn't feel like its stamina was too awful back in the day. I never really encountered that all too much. I'm not sure if it was reduced or something like that, or just simply a placebo on my part, but I really do find that with stats like stamina and weights, they always felt higher back in the day. I'm not really sure why though. But anyway, that is the end of today's video. I really hope that you all have enjoyed, as I've definitely enjoyed making this one. As always, comment down below what is the best early or OG Arc Tame to you, and if you didn't agree with this list, then put your 10 down below in the comments, obviously not in the description, and I'll see you later.